Good afternoon, everyone. So we're very happy to be here, back at our alma mater. So today we're going to tell you a little bit about kind of how to build a billion-dollar business. We're going to give you the recipe of how to do it, and then afterwards you'll know how it goes. A quick introduction kind of ourselves. I'm Christian, graduated here in 2007, then worked for BCG for 3 years, did consulting, then wanted to do my PhD until actually suddenly Zalando came around, and then I skipped my PhD and joined Zalando as CMO. So headed all the marketing, went into 15 international countries, built up an in-house team of 500 people, spending 250 million a year on marketing in a relatively efficient way. And at that time we also started Cherry as an angel fund, which we then kind of turned into a professional fund with 150 million euros kind of 2 years ago.
Yeah. Hi guys, also from my side. I'm Filip, one of the founding partners at Cherry with Christian. Spent a lot of hours in this room, usually in the last 2 rows at WHU. Was 21. Jahrgang, so graduated 2008, last diploma Jahrgang we had here at the school. And as Christian mentioned, I after school went straight into entrepreneurship. I started my first company while still writing diploma thesis in Berlin. Company that doesn't exist anymore today. It was a marketplace for collectibles, company called Tamundo. So I went through like a really tough time trying to scale, so not succeeding to scale. And then after that, the second company I joined Robert and David in the early days at Zalando, and then was responsible there for building new business such as Zalando Lounge, and also doing product. And obviously that's an example of a company that really scaled. So I think that's why we're here today, to talk about how and what are ingredients that you need in order to build a really big business. Because at the end, our job as VCs, and let's see if the slide deck is working, is about that. It's about finding these potential billion-dollar businesses, and there's very few of them in Europe, and they're getting more and more. And we were lucky enough to invest in a few of them, and we're part of building up Zalando, which is one of them. So maybe a few words about Cherry, just so everybody knows what we do. We're early stage investors, so we usually invest in the seed round of a company. We're the first institutional investor in the company usually. Our check size varies, but the smallest we do is around maybe 400,000 or 500,000 euros, and then in the first round up to 1 million, 1.5 million. We focus on consumer technology, which of course has to do with our background because it's pretty much the only thing we understand. Why we think you should work with us and should consider Cherry as one of your investors. I think one important factor is a network of people that are both invested in the fund and people that we work with very closely. So as a portfolio company, and we have many of them here today at IdeaLab as well, we connect you with a number of individuals that we work together closely. So you have the chance, building up customer service, for example, to speak to the responsible customer service person at Zalando, helping you to scale, helping you to not make the same mistakes 2 or 3 times that these guys have made. I think that makes a really big difference when you're trying to grow your business. And we do that not only in the seed stage, but our fund size, 150 million, obviously then allows us also to keep investing. So after doing the seed, we then are also investors in your following rounds, in the A rounds and the B rounds, and can invest then up to 10 million per company. So this whole story kind of how to raise money, right? And I think that's a little bit also the reason why we started Cherry, is we looked at how difficult it is to get access to capital and how broken actually the VC industry is. And you end up talking in endless discussion to firms that don't really care about your business. They're really, far away from you as a founder, and we really tried to make something different. And that's also the reason why we chose to switch the side of the table and come from an operating role into an investing role, which we can tell you is actually quite different. this is a bit our portfolio, the companies we've backed so far. Few names, might ring a bell. Flixbus, Roman, I think from Lesara is here. He's speaking afterwards. He's over there. Super exciting company. We're very, very lucky and happy to be one of their seed investors. Aloha Consti is also here, sitting in the second row, recruiting for his new venture. And then, of course, two of them actually made it really big. And these two are AutoOne and Flixbus, where we invested in the seed round. AutoOne you maybe heard about. It's a marketplace business that helps the consumer to sell a used car and then resells the car on the business side, so actually sells it to traders. And Flixbus, obviously, you probably have taken one. I don't know who has taken a Flixbus here in the room. Yeah, most of you. So I don't really have to explain what you do, what they do. And then, of course, Zalando, who's one of the few companies in Europe that reached a market cap of over 10 billion. So it's actually not a unicorn, but what we say is a decacorn. So thinking about these companies, of course, we always ask ourselves, are there any things that are common denominators within these companies? Is there stuff that kind of unites them, where we think, looking at new companies and new investments, are there stuff that we can learn from these success stories? Are there things where we think, if we have these ingredients, the companies can actually become a billion-dollar business? And there's three of them that are actually super, super important. And I also think the order is really important, right? There's, of course, team. And if you look at a company at the early stage, that's pretty much the only thing you can really look at, because there's not much numbers, there's not much data you can look at, but you really, really need to be sure about the team. Are these people that are 100% driven, they're committed 100% into building this into a very, very large business, or are there people that just want to do it on the side, or people that want to try around, and if things go south, they'll jump ship, which is going to happen. Things are going to go south for at least at some time. And then we look at market, and market is important because for us as a VC, we have to see, is the market even big enough to create a billion-dollar business, right? So the opportunity of being a very successful company in a very small market is not as attractive as, of course, being a successful company in a very large market. So the market size is something that we look at very, very carefully, and I think you should too when you start a business. If I have 10% market share in a particular market, does that mean I'm a 30 million revenue business, or does it mean I'm a 30 billion revenue business? And then the third thing is product, and we're going to go in a little bit more detail. This is just one example. These are the Flixbus guys. Super complementary team. Daniel, Jochen, Andre, covering kind of the main ingredients that it takes to build a company like this. So they had the tech side covered, they had the business and operation side covered, and the marketing side. But on the other end, there's no one fits all, right? There's not this one perfect team where you say this is like the poster boy founder. It's in fact very, very different people, and people that come from anywhere. I know a lot of them come from WHU in Germany, but if you look at our portfolio, we have a lot of WHU founders, but by far not all of them. So we have founders that come from agriculture background, people that haven't ever been to university, in fact. But I think there's one thing that unites them. It's like they think big. And they really are ambitious and driven, and they want to solve a large problem, and they really want to solve a problem that can result into a very big business. And there, the background doesn't matter so much. It's, of course, an advantage to have been at a school like this. But, for example, for us, it's really important also that in a team you have a technical talent as well, right? So if you want to build a software business, if you want to build a technology company, it's super, super important that it's not just super good, fast-thinking business guys, but you have actually people that are able to build a superior product that will succeed in the market. Yeah? And this is, I think, what I mentioned, right? So do you want a large slice of this lemon market, or do you want a small slice of this watermelon? Yeah, so I think this picking a market where you say, if I have 1% market share, because it's really, really tough usually to go to 10%, 20%, 30% market share in any particular industry. If I have 1% market share, how big will my company be? So the German shoe market, just the shoe market we looked at in Germany for Zalando back in the day is a 6 billion market in Germany alone, and it's a growing market. So this is a good example of a business where you're focusing on something that's potentially really, really big. And then the third thing, and then we're going to talk about a bit more about the ingredients of a successful billion-dollar company. The third thing that I think everybody needs to think about when building a business, and it's becoming more and more important because the industry is getting more advanced, and a lot of the factors that were success factors 5 years ago are now becoming kind of commodities and hygiene factors. And the third ingredient or the third component is product. So we are looking for founders that have this product-centric thinking. So they're always constantly talking to customers, they're getting feedback, they're trying to improve the product, they're trying to iterate, and they realize products are never finished, so there's not a single company out there that has a finished product, and they're also able to take tough decisions when a product doesn't work. So one example, of course, very famous example is YouTube, where they actually started as a video dating service, which not many people know, and they were actually encouraging, they were going on Craigslist and paying women actually $20 to upload a video of themselves, which of course nobody did. And then from there, they were so like frustrated because they couldn't get any content on the site that they started to put videos of 747 planes taking off and landing because there was really nothing in terms of activity. And they realized, well, people are putting up videos, but they're putting random stuff. So why don't we make the product about what the users want to put on the platform? And they built YouTube, which is, of course, an amazing business today. And it's a good example. And we have one in the portfolio as well. So we were the seed investor in Quandu. It's a team of also successful entrepreneurs. They've all built companies before. And they started to build a cashier system for restaurants. And we, of course, looked at the team. It's like, yes, it's a big market. It's a very good team. Let's invest. And they realized it's not really working. Restaurants don't really want to pay for a cashier system because it doesn't really bring them additional revenue. It might improve their processes, but it doesn't really change the game. But what does change the game? It's obviously new guests. So they started to iterate and they started to develop a product out of a cashier system, which is actually a reservation management platform. So you could, as a customer, then similarly to what OpenTable and these guys were doing, book a place in a restaurant that's nearby and that's close to you. So it's a good example also that you need to be flexible and you always need to be in touch with your customer base to be able to come to a product which eventually succeeds in the market. Right? And this, I think, and Christian is going to talk about it, is what you need to be building a large company. So let's talk about some of those ingredients.
Yeah, so what does it mean for you as a founder or someone working at a startup kind of in practice? So what are the things you need to know and look for to build such a company? So if you look at kind of Flixbus, that was in 2012 when we kind of met them, they had kind of a tiny, really ugly office, just one room, which was meeting room and office in parallel. And Jochen and Andre were kind of two former BCG fellows. So they turned kind of from consultant to entrepreneur, and actually they discussed for almost one day if they should buy a printer now from the money they got, or if it's cheaper to go to the copy shop and print everything at once. And then they also figured out it's not really worth wasting time with that. But there are many learnings how you get from this tiny setup to kind of such a big firm. So first of all, what you need is a very clear and broad vision that not only you as founders have in mind, but that kind of everyone in the company understands. And whoever you wake up in the middle of the night from your company, they should pretty much know what they're actually working for, right? Because otherwise it's going to be a bit messy. So here at Zalando, it was, for example, creating fresh ways to connect fashion and people. It's not just a vision, it's what we do each day. So it's pretty clear what the company is about, and it helps unite everyone on the same objective. So, and what are the 10 magic ingredients kind of that we see that a founder should keep in mind? So the first one is fail fast to succeed sooner. So basically what we see is, you're going to make lots of kind of wrong decisions, which is totally normal. But the faster you do them, the better it is, right? Because if you fail fast, you quickly figure out, okay, that's the wrong way, I have to shift to the other. But if that takes you 3 months, then you lose kind of 3 months, you burn a lot of money on that time. So, rather be quick and then adjust. Second, don't be scared of failure. It doesn't really matter if something goes wrong or if you figure out, like in the Quando case, hey, it's actually the wrong product that we have produced and no one wants it, right? Then, don't kind of continue on this path until you run out of money, because no one else is going to give you any money for that. So quickly adapt to what's actually needed and accept failure and move on. Third one, don't just discuss problems, find a solution. I think that's pretty clear, because that's especially for people who come from a corporate background. There you tend to discuss problems for a bunch of weeks and then you find a solution. You don't have that time, so quickly find a solution. Don't worry too much about what happened in the past and what went wrong. Just analyze it and then move on. 4, keep things urgent. This is, I think, something kind of you need to always have this paranoia in the company that you need to move faster and faster. Doesn't matter how fast you go, you can be even faster, right? So, and everything that occurs and happens needs to be kind of on your agenda. And if it's urgent, you quickly need to figure it out and solve it. Be creative, it's key to success. I think that's pretty clear, because you will always be in a new market or with a new business model, so you need to find your own ways, and there's not always something you can look at to copy from. Make the end user customer central to all your decisions. I think this is something which I think Amazon started being really good at, only kind of looking at what does actually the consumer want, and then we build the product around it. And in the case of Amazon, they actually don't worry too much about can we actually make money with it in the first place. So when they do whatever grocery delivery, it's hugely loss-making, but it doesn't matter, because if they can tap into this huge market, they will figure it out later on how to earn money with it, right? So yeah, that's quite important. User and top-line growth first. So what we also sometimes see is that there are founders that don't want to burn too much money, which of course is always good, but you also won't raise the next money because you were so super capital efficient, but your top line growth is minimal, right? So what you want to show is that you're growing heavily, so whatever 10, 20% month over month, and that is most important, right? And you should, of course, always minimize your burn, but it will come at a cost, right? Versus a company that doesn't burn that much, but if you only grow kind of 2% per month, it's not really interesting for a VC. Don't be intimidated by competition or large incumbents. I think this is also something we learned over time. So at Zalando, we were always super afraid of Otto kind of moving into the fashion business, and it was just taken them to take whatever 50 million euros, put them in a huge advertising campaign, and we would have been in massive trouble. The good thing is all incumbents are always too slow, right? So even if they try, then a controller comes around and says, hey guys, what are you doing here? You're spending so much money, and then they need to stop it. So usually you don't need to be afraid of that, right? And even at Flixbus, where you had kind of Deutsche Bahn and ADAC and Postbus kind of working against you, you're always faster than these guys, and you can always execute better than those. So these are 8 ingredients. We said we have 10. So number 9, kind of dream big or go home. I think you should always remember that. Amazon in 98, I sell books, not I sell whatever the fuck I want. And that's pretty much the case. So you always need to have this kind of broad vision and big picture. And then last one, focus on the company. This is, I think, something that we sometimes see with founders is, they also worry a bit too much about themselves, right? So on the first hand, there is no replacement for hard work. Starting your company is always going to be hard work. It's 24/7. You always think about it. And there is no founder who does it in a, 4-day work week. Company first, ego second. It's always beautiful to be in magazines and hang around at conferences, but you don't get anything for it, right? Except you're a VC, then you can hang around at conferences. But I think as a founder, you don't really kind of benefit from that, and it just defocuses you from your core business. Play for the team. Teamwork is always important, and I think very important, hire people that are actually better than you, right? So don't find people where you think, hey, they can be kind of dangerous for me because I always want to be the CEO. You should rather hire people where you can even learn from them, and always kind of hire on a level where you think that's pretty unrealistic that this guy is going to join me, but rather shoot for the big stars than having people that are not kind of as good as you are. Yeah, so I hope you know what it takes now. So that's our recipe. If you want to know more, just kind of email us, or if you want to start your company kind of in this way of working, then of course also please reach out to us. And then hopefully one day your company becomes a unicorn. So today a bunch of our companies is also here on campus. So Flash and Post Beverage Delivery Company, they now have 1,000 employees after kind of 1.5 years. Joblift made a search for jobs. Home-like, long-term apartment rental. Aloha, Consti's here, have a lifestyle brand. Lizara, you're going to learn a lot more about this in a second. Freight Hub, I think you've heard Ferry at the panel, and Karubi, a marketplace for car repair. So all these guys, all the founders are here. They're recruiting, looking for people who can join their team. So if you want to get in touch with them, kind of just go straight to them or ask us for an intro, and we're happy to do that. Good, I think that's it. If you have any questions now, we're of course happy to answer them.
Thanks.
Yeah. So it was all clear.
Do we have questions? Mr. Moderator?
Yeah.
I see somebody over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Microphone.
Yeah.
In front of the microphone, maybe everyone can hear me.
Yeah.
So, hold on, give it a second.
Yeah.
So, okay, works. So I'm pretty much interested how you transition from being in a startup or in a growing startup or whatever you name it, and then going through being a venture capitalist. And practical example, how has your day life changed since then?
So I think it's a pretty big transition, to be honest, because your whole life changes in a way that you're not only worrying about one company at the same time, and it's everything, the whole life, everything centers around this one baby that you have, but you have many babies, right? And I think one advantage that, of course, you have is that if you have worked in a company, and there's many investors that have not done this, and they're great investors. But I think what we see is an advantage is that you're experienced when things don't go the way you planned them, right? Which is going to be the case quite often. And I think this time, when kind of really shit hits the fan, this is also when it's really important that you speak to an investor that can kind of think aligned with you as a founder, in a sense that they've been through it and they know what how to keep calm and how to keep cool. So I think this experience actually helps us a lot, and I think the one big difference between the jobs is that you get to look at very different things, right? So one day you're speaking to I was just in Poland last week speaking to a robotics company that is developing AI software for the steering of robots, and the next day you're back in Berlin speaking to a travel marketplace. Yeah? So it's like very different different areas and different companies.
Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up? So do you have any here? Still
yeah.
the same guy.
Okay.
Sorry. Do you have any set of rules in terms of like heading into the right direction together with the founders, or do you have any set of rules like not being operative again and taking over the company you invested in?
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. So we won't take over the companies again. And I think there you have different ways of how you work with founders, right? So the kind of most formal and official way is the board meeting, where you meet with all the other investors and discuss the strategy of the company, right? But we are much kind of closer, so we meet up with the founders, whatever, once a week, every 2 weeks, and discuss kind of what are their concerns, what are their problems, and how can we help them. But we're never gonna tell them, look, we're gonna ask the right questions, hopefully, and try to point to problems, and then try to solve them together. If the founder says, hey, I want to go left, and we say, we'd rather gonna go right, but at the end, the founder is always much kind of deeper into his business, so he should know better. He's closer to the customer, so he has usually a better judgment on what to do. And at the end, kind of it's always the founder's company, and kind of the founder is our #1 customer that we want to be happy.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, you told us the ingredients for scaling a 1 billion business. What is the ingredient for hiring better people than the founder?
Yeah. So I think that's the saying, right? A hires A, B hires C. Yeah. So if you're always trying to hire someone that cannot kind of challenge you, then you're going to have a pretty weak team pretty soon, because every one of them is going to do the same. They're going to hire people that are worse than them, so they don't get dangerous for them, right? And it's a spiral. So you need to break that spiral, and you need to be very, very modest in the sense of, okay, this is a person maybe impossible to get at first sight, but what can I do to really motivate that person? And usually you can really motivate people. Of course, you can motivate them in money, you can motivate them with equity, but most of the time you can motivate them with the challenge that you're trying to solve and the responsibility they can take in solving that challenge. So if you make the vision of the company big enough, if you really sell also your company and your vision, and you make them part of that vision, I think it's quite surprising what people, and brilliant, brilliant people, are joining pretty early stage companies. And I think this is the kind of people you need if you want to be really successful.
Mm-hmm. Last question.
Is protection of intellectual property important for your investment decisions?
It depends a bit on the business, right? So I think if you are kind of a marketplace for X, then there's not so much you can protect, right? If you have a certain technology, so for example, we invested in a vertical farming company, so you can produce kind of herbs and leafy greens in a closed environment and stuff. So there, it is of course pretty important, because it's something that they developed over the last 3 years and that is patented, and you need to make sure this really stays within the company and cannot be copied so easily. But with a kind of, it depends a bit on the business model, I would say. Good. Great. So I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy.